Welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast. My name's Steve Statler, and this week we're going to be talking to Donna Lanzetta, who is the CEO of multiple businesses. She runs a fish farm. She also runs a blockchain middleware track and trace company. She owns a restaurant as well. So this is a super interesting perspective. A lot of the things that really excite me about the space we cover in this podcast is the view we have of what's going to come in the future. And a really important aspect of that is end-to-end visibility. And Donna is an entrepreneur who's making end-to-end visibility happening because she owns the upstream fish farm, the downstream restaurant, and the business that can provide the connectivity between those two, so that this future that so many of us are working towards, where consumers can understand so much more about where the food and clothing and other products have come from that they're buying, and also how they've been treated on the way, and a future where manufacturers can connect directly with consumers and potentially make huge savings, reduce massive reductions in the cost of goods, in carbon when you can do that. It's really exciting. And I think one of the places where we're going to see this end-to-end connectivity happen is in smaller businesses. I think the wine trade is another one where I know that there are businesses that are working on putting ambient technology onto cases of wine, and initially going downstream a little bit, but ultimately down to the consumer. So it's an exciting time in ambient IoT, and that's underscored by the fact that AmbAI Research have published another report on ambient IoT. This one has got a volume forecast, which is always good. Numbers make the world go round, and their forecast is 1.1 billion ambient IoT devices by 2030. Now, of course, we have no idea whether this will come to fruition. I guess the one thing we know is it's going to be wrong. It'll probably either be a little optimistic or a little pessimistic, but I think it's a reasonable guess. I personally believe it's on the conservative side. I know of at least 3 customers that are using ambient IoT for coarse grain tracking of things who have plans in the next 2 years. So 2027 to get to roughly that number as they go down to case level tracking in retail and returns tracking in online commerce and parcel tracking in the postal space. So, but who knows? It'll be exciting to see that roll out. So if you want to stay in touch with what's happening and connect directly with me, I would love to meet you. I'm going to be attending at least 3 events between now and the end of the year. I'm speaking at them. The first one is called TechBlick, Future of Electronics. It's going to be in Boston, June the 11th and 12th. And I'm going to be talking about connecting artificial intelligence and ambient IoT, this new field of ambient intelligence. So looking forward to that. And then later that month, June 23rd, 24th, I'm going to be in Amsterdam, AIPIA, which is the Active Intelligent Packaging Industry Association. And I'm going to be on a panel talking about digital product passports. It's the opening panel. It's sponsored by our friends at Identiv. So thanks to the folks at Identiv for inviting not just me, but we have representatives from ST Micro, who make chips that go into NFC tags. We've got the leader of the NFC Forum, who's going to be there. Thomas Roding, who is the vice chair of JTC 24, the standards group that's working on digital product passports. He's also the CEO of Naravero. Always have a problem saying that, but they're a digital product passport as a service company over in Europe. I'm going to be really interested to meet him. He's really got his finger on the pulse of what's happening. And an old friend and colleague of mine, Vanu Gutlapalli, who's the CEO of another San Diego-based company, Tag and Track. He's going to be on the panel as well. So that's that. And then the last event in November, November the 4th and the 6th, is going to be Embedded World North America. And that's going to be in Anaheim, just north of where I live here in California. And the Ambient IoT Alliance has got 2 hours on the agenda. There's going to be 3 presentations, a panel. We'll see who's actually going to be presenting what. I'm definitely going to be there because it's pretty much on my doorstep. And our hope is to get one of the customers who's actually using Ambient IoT to talk. And the Alliance is actually working on some really interesting white papers. One which is a summary of all of the standards activity that's going on across Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and cellular. And so I'm hoping that is going to be at least one of the presentations. And there's another one on ROI and use cases. So I'm lobbying for both of those to be represented. But we'll see. As we learn more about that, I'll share details here. And lastly, before we get to Donna, I just wanted to tell you a bit about what we're doing at my new company, AmbAI, which is spelled A-M-B as in ambient and then AI. We've got a YouGov survey, which we're going to be publishing in the next month. It's about expiry dates, which is one of the things that's going to change drastically as we get intelligence in the supply chain. We can make expiry dates a lot more accurate. And it turns out, according to this survey, people really want that. So this is one thing that we're working on. They're also working on an Ambient IoT report, which is going to be a really substantial report on the standards, the scenarios for the rollout of Ambient IoT, the vendors that are out there. And the last thing is, as a company, we're focusing on brands. So we're focusing on and looking for brands that are interested in direct connections with their customers using AI, using Ambient IoT, and using this AI assistant that we're developing here at AmbAI. So that's what we're doing in the company. Those are the events that are happening. Interesting research. But here, what you probably came for is my conversation with Donna Lanzetta, CEO of multiple companies doing end-to-end track and trace in the seafood market. Enjoy it. Donna, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's really great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for having me. I love to speak about aquaculture. So,
yes, and I was just thinking about my questions to you and everything that you've done, and you've done a lot of things over the years. I was going through your web history, but in terms of aquaculture and seafood, traceability, ethical sourcing, you've got that problem surrounded. You've got the restaurant, you've got the production, the fish farm, and you've got the technology company. So you've got kind of the beginning and the middle and the end. What are the problems that you're trying to solve? You're putting, I think you're taking a very holistic approach, and I'm very interested in what's motivating you to do all of these things.
well, it's a tapestry. So really, we started with monofish farms in order to feed the world, right? To be able to grow protein in the ocean, in federal water, and to be able to do it differently without impact on the environment, and to track and trace and prove what we're doing so that we can prove with science the efficiency of ocean farming and also the opportunity to have a zero carbon footprint, theoretically, with not using any natural resources and having responsible, sustainable behavior at sea. That was just really the beginning of the journey, is starting on these permits, and we have the two offshore farms that we're permitting now, full application in the Gulf for a site 23 miles off of Pensacola, where we'll have 12 submerged net pens.
So this is Manna Fish Farms, and Manna. I have to confess, I'm not a regular churchgoer, but I grew up in England, where the church and the school they're actually intertwined. There's no separation of church and state. It's really the opposite. So manna, it's the kind of the Hebrew God creating food for the Israelites as they're lost in the desert, right? That was the thing. And I guess I was really surprised as I looked at some of your websites that there are huge problems with food production, even seafood production. Is that not the case?
Well, in the US, we're importing 91% of our seafood. So, and we're doing quite a bit now in land base in the US, and that's great. Of course, land base uses water and land and natural resources, where the opportunity to grow in the ocean and not use those resources. Of course, we'll use other resources because we need to use fuel to get back and forth, but we're looking at electric vessels. We're looking at ways to do it differently so that we don't have that great impact. And I think it can be done. In the US, there are no federal water finfish farms. We do have a state water farm that's very successful. Blue Ocean Mariculture in Hawaii is growing kampachi in state waters. Beautiful.
What's kampachi?
Kampachi, it's like a yellowtail.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So it's a delicious fish.
Okay. And that's so I'm not clear on what this distinction is between what you're doing, which sounds like it's a very slow process in terms of getting all of the permits that are required. But you're literally you have pens out close to shore where the fish are cultivated. How is that different to what's going on in Hawaii? Or
in Hawaii, they're near to shore because they can get the depth that they need very close to shore. Down in Florida, we would have to go 23 miles offshore in order to get the depth we need to use these submersible net pens. In New York, we've been doing marine spatial planning for a site off eastern Long Island that's 9 miles offshore to get that depth that we need. So it really depends where you are. There's about 37 federal and state agencies in the U.S. that have to get on the same page in order to permit a farm in federal water. Right now, we have no legislation or clear pathway to show how this can be done. We are pioneering to help create that pathway and help others who will come after us understand how it can be done faster, because no farm will ever be viable if they have to spend 10 years getting permits. It's impossible.
which is what you've been doing.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's working for our own permits, but also at the same time, working to share information about how this can be streamlined in the future.
So fish farming that's done onshore, you were gracious about it, but it's certainly got its critics in terms of the pollution and disease and so forth. And it's obviously constrained by size. Presumably, if you're out at sea, then a lot of those issues are mitigated.
Yes, that's the whole idea, to go out to sea and be able to have a 9,000 cubic meter net pen underwater with, let's say, 250,000 pounds of fish. We'll have 12. It's a lot of fish. But if we don't introduce anything inorganic into the sea and we monitor, right now we're doing very robust modeling to determine in that specific site, well, first, to select the site that we believe will be suitable for farming and have the least impact on the other ocean users, and find a good spot. And then to do our operations so we have a minimal impact, we've committed to 100% transparency. So that will be interesting because everybody can watch along with us, and we don't want to be mysterious about what we're doing. We want to be
Hmm.
transparent. And it really was that transparency, commitment, and traceability that kind of led me into the blockchain business, because when you think about all that fish and everything coming through the supply chain and looking at the efficiency of the supply chain, it was another shock to learn that, about 50% to 70% on some species are mislabeled and not actually the fish. And we're in a time right now where people want to know what they're having. They don't want to have products that are illegal or some type of IUU fishing, if they even know what IUU fishing is, right? So we have to educate them, and what better way than through this platform that we've developed to track products through the supply chain.
And can you explain what it is? Because I don't know what it is.
So what it is we've convened a blockchain network, and we're on the IBM Food Trust, or what
Mhm.
used to be the IBM Food Trust. And what it does is it locks in the provenance of the product, where it was from, when it was harvested. And then we add tools to the platform to help seafood users in this sense, temperature, so we can track temperature, carbon footprint tracking, so we can track that, species authentication. These are important tools because if I'm going to pay for halibut, I want to know that I'm actually getting halibut and not some species that's been substituted in. So I think as we develop, there'll be more tools that will come in. And then we have the interoperability to link into other platforms, whether it's Seafood Import Monitoring Program or FSMA, and all these tariffs that are now, how do we regulate? How do we ensure that the products are compliant, are actually from where they say they're from, and
Mhm.
not, in fact, going through one country to get to another country and, to circumvent the tariffs. So that's an interesting tool as well. And now we're also seeing, some farmers. I myself am an oyster farmer now while I'm waiting. We've been
Oh,
farming.
really?
Yes. But some farmers are performing ecosystem services, like oyster farmers are sequestering carbon. So we
Yes.
should calculate that, and we need to log it in, and we can bank it in a carbon sink, carbon bank on the same platform that's
Mhm.
tracking products. So we'll see how all that goes. If you look into the European Union and what's happening around the world with carbon credits, etc., I think it's something that may come our way down the line.
Yeah, I think more and more we're becoming educated into the problems that we as a species are wreaking over the world. The industrialization that we've all benefited from in amazing positive ways has a cost, and it seems like, and some people will just say, well, it's up to the government to kind of fix it. But I think there's another set of people that feel like they want to use their power as consumer to have agency and to drive the changes that they want to see. And, ultimately, change is driven by the people, isn't it? Whether it's people at the ballot box or people at the store. But you can't exercise change if you're in the dark. And when we buy foods at the moment, we are largely in the dark, aren't we? The packaging doesn't permit a full audit trail of where things come from. It's minimal. Their goal is to get you to buy something and to cut the cost of the packaging, and there's just practical limits. But now with AI, with phones, there's this opportunity, isn't there, to see, well, what am I making things worse? Am I making things better? And am I consuming something that's healthy, that's going to help my family? And so I think what you're doing is important. And I think it's fascinating that you really have this 360-degree view of it. And, I think, I'm not sure what the status is of your restaurant, but I remember you and I talking about the fact that you had a restaurant, and some of the challenges of informing people in that situation about what they're consuming. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yes, yes. Plug for my restaurant, Monnet Lobster Inn in Southampton, New York. But on May 2nd, we have the Seed to Soil Summit there, which is the local university having their conference at the School of Marine Science. And then after the conference, they're coming over to have dinner in the restaurant. The restaurant is actually an opportunity to link the blockchain technology into the restaurant, interoperate with our inventory system, and actually have a QR code on our menu that guests will be able to scan and get accurate information, accurate being the operative word, about the products that they may be ordering. You know, we know we're going to do well and do the right thing with this company because it can only get better, right? We tracked a tuna from Montauk just to see Montauk, New York, tuna capital of I don't know what, but so we tracked a tuna from Montauk. It was bought on the dock by a broker, sold to another distributor, broker, freezes it, brings it to Japan. It gets frozen, sold to another broker in Japan, sells it to another distributor in Japan. Second distributor brings it back to the US. It ends up at Fulton Fish Market, gets sold to a broker and then to another distributor. That last distributor brings it back to a restaurant on Long Island that was literally 30 miles away from where it was originally caught, and they're getting it 6 months later. And then the fisherman's being told, "Sorry, Mr. Fisherman, we can't give you the full amount from the auction because somewhere along the line they didn't chill your fish properly, and you're only getting this." And that is, it's a travesty, really, when we think about the hard work that the fishermen do and the farmers. This is a tool that can be used by both to ensure quality, to allow instant recalls if there's a problem, and that will also reduce costs, to reduce costs of products liability insurance because of those safety features that are inherent in the platform. So it can only get better. The supply
Yes.
chain can become more efficient. We can, get more money into the pockets of the fishermen and the farmers as they're rightfully entitled to. And also see where maybe there's too many middlemen really sucking the juice out of the industry. So, fish sauce.
Right. Yeah, so you can have some efficiencies that will reduce cost and improve freshness and extend shelf life and reduce waste.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy, certainly easy for me to get on my soapbox and get into preach mode about the real problems that exist and use guilt and a desire for fixing terrible labor conditions is one of the things that I learned from your website that exists. There's forced labor, slave labor involved in some of these supply chains. And I think it's very easy for this to become a downer, but I think it's also important to paint the picture of how, the enjoyment that can come if we deploy this technology. I don't know if you have some thoughts on that, but I do. But I'll let you. Let's paint the picture of what this could be like in a world where those problems get fixed and why people can actually be happier in this world.
Yes, I think I can envision it myself, around oysters, especially right here in my region in New York. We have wonderful oyster farming, wonderful wild oysters. So to be able to have a row of barrels with oysters and where you could go down the line and scan and say, "Oh, look, this oyster farmer is a woman," or, "Oh, look, this oyster farmer is from this particular area." And we can look at where and how and whether they're wild and farmed, and we can engage around the oyster and have taste testings and friendly competitions for here in Eastern Long Island, we have the North Fork and the South Fork. So we're having oyster farmers on both sides in various bays, so we can talk about the merwa of the oysters and where they're from and which taste best. And I mean, it's all fun and delicious.
Yeah, people can have better tasting food that they really enjoy. And if I think about some of the best eating experiences I've had, it's been going to like a farmer's market where you meet the person that's grown the food and you get enthusiastic about it because it's basically there's a story. And mass produced food where you have no idea where it's come from. There really is no story. It's sustenance for subsistence rather than we've all got a short life to live. Let's enjoy our food. And anyone that's been to a good restaurant and had a great waiter that's told the story of where the wine or the food has come from knows that there's joy to be had when you understand where something has come from. But sometimes it's difficult even for a waiter to know what story to tell. I guess you run a restaurant, you've seen that yourself, right?
I've seen and I've eaten at a lot of restaurants where the servers have given me misinformation. They're telling me, "Oh, it's definitely wild," when I know it's farmed, because they think that's what I wanna hear. But I
Yes.
wanna hear the truth, not what
Yeah.
they think I wanna hear. And what's evolving now is also liability, Steve. Liability for the restaurants that are saying they're serving local food, and maybe it's been switched out and maybe it's not. Saying that they're serving, Gulf shrimp when in fact the shrimp is from Thailand. And this happened just last summer out here with us. My distributor had previously paid a fine of 50,000 for illegal product and then got criminally sued for allegedly being part of a conspiracy. And the conspiracy was to move illegal seafood into the marketplace and with the fishermen. And so what happened is they took a deal, testified against the fishermen, admitted they were part of a conspiracy to falsify records and books and really bring illegal product into the marketplace. They paid a $250,000 fine the second time and testified against the fisherman, who now is in jail for 3 years. So this is a big problem that needs to be resolved. Now, if I bought that product into my restaurant, conceivably, I could be part of that conspiracy.
Mm,
I don't wanna
yeah,
be part of a conspiracy. I could be
absolutely.
charged with part of that being part of that conspiracy. I think we're seeing chefs and restaurant owners, that wanna do the right thing, that make commitments to do the right thing, and then don't have the tools to do the right thing because of this, seafood fraud, which is rampant throughout the industry.
It's interesting. Working on starting my own company at the moment, I'm struck by how you need to have two sides to your brain working. On one hand, there's a very realistic, no BS, cynical side. And then the other side is they would call it visionary. And I'm not talking about Steve Jobs giving performance art presentations, but basically a sense in your mind about where you want to head, where that things really, an optimism that things can really be better. And I mean, you were a lawyer, an attorney, a judge in a traffic court, a New York traffic court. I'm sure you saw a huge amount of real life, and I'd love to hear some stories about that, maybe at another time.
Yeah.
But how do you keep that duality going in your head of optimism, idealism, vision with you've probably seen a lot of people getting into trouble, laws broken, all that sort of thing. How do you do that?
Liar, liar, pants on fire. That was the hardest part about, being in the legal field for all those years is just flushing out the lies, and there's so
Yes.
much, of it. So to have when I think about flushing out the lies out of the seafood supply chain, what better tool than the blockchain? Because the blockchain provides a immutable record, can't be changed. It is what it is, and that's it. And we can work with that and build on that. And that's the way I see it. With offshore, I just wanted to circle back
Hmm.
because you asked me about the near shore, and I didn't really answer you, but I think there is a place, too, for the nearshore culture
Hmm.
And it's all about balance, Steve. It's about balancing production with the capacity of the environment and monitoring. Like I said, we're putting our sensors so we can determine right now with our modeling where the sensors should go so we can check where the feed is going to land or likely to land and make sure we don't overfeed the fish offshore.
Right.
Even with the blockchain, I look to see once we have all the data of the seafood moving, how can we build more with that? Whether we can have smart contracts and maybe a auction platform or a coin, or one thing we're looking at is to move products through the waterway on an electric catamaran, and I'm looking to move from Huntington, New York, all the way up the coast to Maine, and have AI determine our supply, where our stops are, what we need to pick up and drop off at which locations, and that's exciting. It's totally different and new and
Yeah.
innovative.
We have some new tools. So let's go back to the tools. And you mentioned that you started this journey working with IBM Food Trust. And my understanding is that they are retiring that offering now. So what are your plans on that front? How are you going to adapt with that reality?
Hmm. We've gone with a new platform that has assumed the food trust, if you will, and that's where we're starting. And what I've learned in the last 6 months in assuming the operators who are already on the platform is that like Norwegians are way ahead of us. That's really what I say. They were just way ahead. Not only are there 12 Norwegian salmon farms already using the platform that we can, service them now as our users. It sets a model for sustainability and really for responsibility for the future. And it's not only the farms. There's others that are using the platform to move other products. So, we're excited for seafood,
Hmm.
but we're looking at other items that would benefit from the platform as well, like timber or maybe baby
Hmm.
food or cannabis or, who knows?
Yeah.
So this is just really the beginning. When you look at the Food Safety Modernization Act and the mandate for reporting, yes, it's been pushed back a little bit, but it's coming. It has to come.
Yeah. Well, it's been pushed back 30 months, hasn't it? The FISMA, we've
Yeah.
covered FISMA a couple of times. We had Frank Yanis on the podcast, and the deadline was January the 20th, 2026. So just basically half a year away. And surprise, surprise, the whole industry is not ready for that. So I think it got pushed back 30 months, which seems like a long time, 2.5 years. But really, it's still probably not enough time for absolutely everyone to do what needs to be done. So the urgency hasn't gone away. The government is requiring traceability because it saves lives, and it also saves a lot of money because you don't want industry decimated. So automating traceability is clearly the way to go. Having this regulation is a driver for putting automation in that can just help you make more money as well as stay the right side of the law. So you're working with Starfish, is that correct? Is
Yes.
it okay to say that? So Wiggs, who was on the show as CEO of Starfish, and also when he was at IBM Food Trust, is one of the actually the person that linked us together. So thank you, Wiggs.
That's right.
Can you talk a bit about what the Manna Seafood blockchain is going to be doing beyond so there's the Starfish platform. What do you do to add to that and use it in your platform? And who are the customers that you want for the Manna Seafood blockchain business? You're maybe going from almost as competitors, although I guess your seafood's not really competing with beef and other food products. But who's your customer and what are you offering them?
Yes, so we offer them at Mono Blockchain these tools that we're integrating into our system, right? They're not going to be, it's not just straight tracking and tracing. Of course, there's temperature because that's been pretty much established. But
Hmm.
as we go from there to be able to have, as I said, these smart contracts and species authentication and other deliverables that will come to the users, and also the ability to interoperate. And this is key. It was a missing piece for a while as we were starting because everyone has different systems, different inventory systems in the restaurants, different systems in the processing plants, different systems that all need to be connected in order for this platform to be efficient. So we offer the interoperability piece as well as the specific tools per industry. I've been talking about seafood, but of course, we're looking at meat. We already have some chicken on, and I think you'll see some new exciting uses of the platform over the next year. A little teaser. You'll have to have me back.
Very good. We will. And so, what's your approach? Having a vision is kind of the fun part, I guess, of where you want to get to. And, the challenge is like the sequence of and knowing what technologies to use when and not overbuilding too early. So, how are you organizing your go to market?
Yes, so we have a huge team. We're spread out geographically in different ports and locations. We start locally to, showcase the benefits of the local platform, how we can guarantee that it's actually local fish through our local markets and our local restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also, because we're in Norway already, on with salmon on the platform, that we start on that in a more global scale to be looking at high producing fish farms that would benefit from utilization of the platform. And we also, like I said, have these new uses that are coming out that'll be scaled up, but it's almost like a blitz scale approach to this launch. I think over the next 6 months, we'll be seeing a lot of activity, and our pilots are underway now
Hmm.
to be able to start to use the data. Um, and it's promoting US seafood too, like using the oysters as a pilot to be able to learn about oyster farming, calculate the sequestration of carbon, look and see who those farmers are, what made them become farmers, and get it all into a little 30-second video clip that consumers can watch and say, oh, for example, Peconic tonic oysters, two gentlemen from Australia who just fell in love with oyster farming.
Hmm.
Who knew? One lives in Queens, one lives in New Jersey. They bought a little farm out here with oysters, and they now have 2 million oysters in the water, and it's a labor of love. So to learn about that and taste it too, that'll be fun. And I think we'll have some great activities at the restaurant, but, right now I have 4.5 acres across the street from the restaurant, and I'm working hard to build a aquaculture innovation center on that, land, integrating the restaurant and the farmland, and then the farmland would serve as a demonstration farm, so tours could come, schools could come, you could walk through the farm and see, and taste the oysters and see how, and maybe take a boat ride out to the oyster lease, and come back, or go around the farm and see them farming seaweed or mushrooms, or how they're making compost, how they're using the oyster shells to make oyster reefs,
Hmm.
and the whole circularity of it all, right? We'll have bees and honey and eggs and, looking at all of that, I'm excited to then take even the seaweed and say, okay, what are we doing with the seaweed then? Oh, here we are. We have these chairs that we made out of the seaweed, or, look at this. And so it's a big vision, but hoping that the funding will align and I'll be able to build this aquaculture innovation center, which is really what I wanted to do from the beginning when I bought the restaurant in 2018, was to have it be a mecca for seafood, a learning center to learn about offshore aquaculture, to learn about ropeless gear for lobster and crab farming. What's that about and how can we teach? And we do have a manufacturing division in Mana Systems, that will be making the equipment. So also to show these are different types of
The equipment for the oyster farming?
the equipment for the oyster farming, the Aquafort IMTA platforms for farming nearshore and offshore, and also the storm-safe submersible net pens, which are the larger submersible pens we plan to use in the open ocean. So, and to work with that equipment to integrate robotics and this new technology that rolls out every year, new tools that can be added to the equipment, whether it's automated feed or nano bubbles or different types of materials that can be used. So we can't help but look at all of that at the same time.
Okay. So you're really vertically integrating, but you're also opening the technology that you're developing to vertically integrate yourself, and you're offering it to others, which I think makes sense. If you're going to affect change and have a sustainable business model, then that does make sense. And I do want to go back to the question of, well, how do people get started? But in terms of what this looks like or will look like, someone can go to your restaurant, they'll scan the QR code, they'll see the full provenance of where the produce on the menu, the seafood, the meats, the vegetables that come from, and there'll be a story that can go beyond whatever a waiter can tell them in a few minutes. If someone runs an oyster farm and they like the sound of what you've described, beyond just getting in touch with you, what's the sort of process that you recommend to start to be able to implement traceability? Because it's not a simple thing, is it?
It's not a simple thing. I would recommend that they call me and get on the waiting list. We're supporting the first species onto the platform by covering the cost for their pilot video. But so there's an opportunity, whoever the first steelhead farmer might be, we would cover that, right? So that's kind of fun in the beginning. But to get on now, they can start by integrating their farm with tools like the carbon sequestration tracker that NOAA has released. It's a free tool. All oyster farmers can use it, and it calculates the ecosystem services those oysters are performing. So just so it's already there, and when we come in, we just link it onto the platform. That kind of thing, keeping their records. They're already tagging products. I just really get ready. I think that it's going to be a big movement really through the restaurants, because this liability issue is really front and center with the restaurants. Inside Edition just did an expose in New York City where they went from seafood restaurant to seafood restaurant. I think they did about 10, where they looked at the menu. They said, "Oh, you're saying that this is this," and they tested it. They sent it to the lab. Half of them were misrepresenting, and it's not necessarily the restaurants that know, but the buck is going to stop with them, because they have the responsibility of presenting the product to the consumers. And when they say we're sourcing locally, they then have to source locally. And how do they source locally? For sure, they either go and catch it themselves, or they go down to the dock and make sure that it's just come in that day, really, or they have to trust their distributor.
Yeah.
So that becomes an issue.
Yes, I commend what you're doing. I think it's the way things are going. The JTC 24 committee, which is basically the European Union standard for digital product passports. And that's got the weight of law behind it. So there's going to be enforcement and requirements for the European Union. That's a standard that's going to spread beyond Europe because it applies to everyone that's supplying Europe, and also a lot of the countries that follow Europe through the UN and so forth. So I think this is definitely the way to go. And to me, the secret is to figure out how can you do the right thing, but also get efficiencies, save money, make money at the same time. And I think what you've outlined with telling the story behind a product, which allows you to command a premium, is certainly an important part of that. Well, I can't believe it. We've almost consumed all our time, but is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you about what you're doing in this space, or have we captured it?
I think it's really important that everyone understand why it's so important to farm in the ocean and what
Hmm.
the scope is of what we're proposing and what can be accomplished in such a small area. For example, we can use 1/10 of 1% of our exclusive economic zone. 1/10 of 1%. And in that 1/10 of 1%, we can grow an amount equal to the total annual wild catch. 1/10 of 1%, right?
Yeah, so we've got huge opportunity for growth, and where we may be running out of space and land and running short on inputs and all that sort of thing in other spaces, then we've got an opportunity here.
The other thing I think is really important is that fish is such an efficient protein to grow, more efficient in that it can convert 1 pound of feed or 1.5 pounds of feed to a pound of biomass. Now, when you're farming chicken or pork or meat, that can go up to 8 to 10 pounds of feed for a pound of beef, and the scales down through beef and chicken, etc. But I think that to be able to have that efficient biomass conversion is a big part of ocean farming, and fish are just natural they're so healthy, they're so
Hmm.
good for you, and if you feed them the right products, the right feed, I don't wanna say organic, but natural, with some of the new compositions that are coming up between fly larvae or, seafood waste products that can be used. It's all about this circular economy and doing the most efficient job in bringing that biomass, to the market. Fish don't it won't doesn't use any water. They're not using we did a study and we found that we can power the farms with wave energy. So we cannot use fuel. We can look at electric vessels to bring our feed out and bring our harvest in and be more efficient in these ways. So I think when you think about the future and all the people that are going to need protein,
Hmm.
has to be a big part of it. And that 1/10 of 1% is so important to understand the scope. We're not looking to fill the federal waters with fish farms. It's a small footprint, and it's a great production amount. And let's get going with it. US is all I could say. It's time. It's overdue.
I agree. So, Donna, one of my favorite parts of the show is where we ask our guests for 3 songs that have meaning to them. What 3 songs did you choose?
Well, I have to first thank you for the heads up on this. I wouldn't have liked being put on the spot, but have thought about it. And my selections are my first choice is Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. I think it's
Ah, yeah.
really important to, base our lives giving thanks to God. And I think it's a big part of my life and my faith and really, the faith that has driven the development of my company. So it's a big part for Hallelujah. I know it's kind of about love, and that's not, but for me, it's about spirituality and giving thanks.
Oh, I'm racking my brains. I was just watching a clip on Facebook of someone being asked this question on a late night talk show, and they chose the same song. Some celebrity. It's going to come to me. But anyway, you're not alone. Other people think that's a really good song too.
It is. Leonard Cohen, very talented.
Yeah. Rest in peace. Okay, good. Great start. What's song number 2?
So, number 2 is a little, off the beaten track. There was an old, band called Air Supply.
Oh, I
I
remember
don't know
them.
if you remember
I
them, but
do. Yeah.
they sang a song, "Hold Your Head Up."
Yes.
I think it really goes a long way to drive, perseverance and, powering through, which has been a really big part for, Mana in waiting for the permits and getting through all the opposition and really persevering, and that's what we do. So, Air Supply, "Hold Your Head Up."
Yeah, a lot of people have motivational songs that they listen to before going into meetings, but I think the motivation that enables an entrepreneur to push through setbacks is really appropriate, especially for this show where we're dealing with cutting edge technology and going places no person has gone before. So very good.
Thank you. And my final song,
Yeah.
would is also digging deep into the barrel. It's a Carole King song from
Uh,
back in the day. You may
right.
remember Tapestry, and
Yes. Amazing album.
Tapestry for me is about the circular economy, but really it's about how everything is interwoven, and, for me, that's really my life, and the fact that where I am now with developing this company and all the people that I have met over the last 10 years to make it happen, we're now, we have a pretty strong woven web, and we're ready to lead in ocean mariculture, in the US and really in supply chain technology also throughout the world. So, yeah, Tapestry, beautiful song.
Yeah, I've got it in my record collection behind me. It is an amazing record, so I'm there with you. Wonderful. Well, Donna, thanks so much for some inspiring music choices, and thanks very much for appearing on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate, the opportunity, Steve. Thanks.
Okay, that was the conversation with Donna. Thanks very much for sticking to the end. You're unusual and tremendously valued for doing that. I do want to thank Wiliot for their continued sponsorship of the show. They underwrite the cost of the editing, which is done by Aaron Hammock, who has immense stamina and skill. So thanks to Aaron for doing that. Thanks to Sierra Walden of Wiliot, who is the person that helps to push out the episodes on LinkedIn and on the Wiliot website. And lastly, what have I been listening to as I've been working since we last spoke? Well, I've been going back to the world of CDs, and there's a Dr. Martin music sampler, which is an amazing CD. It's probably really difficult to get. I don't know if you can listen to it online. I have been listening to it in its CD form, and it's got an interesting selection of groups. Primal Scream, a group called Solo Coughing, DJ Cool, and a track called Ripstop, which is really, really cool. This CD is particularly interesting to me. It came out, I think, around about 1990, and it includes an Earthlink subscription for free 15 days of dial-up internet access. So that's really makes me think back to those good old days when you had to buy special hardware and software and find an ISP that had lots of phone lines that could take our connections. So anyway, that's it from me. Until next time, enjoy the journey and be safe. Thanks for watching this episode of the Mr. Beacon Ambient IoT podcast here on YouTube. You can listen to this episode on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed it, please like and share this video. And be sure to subscribe for more videos. For more information about Wiliot, Ambient IoT, and IoT Pixels, head over to wiliot.com.